Truth Seekers is excited to welcome John Griveas to this week's conversation, Conditioning. John is a veteran, a father, a dog lover, and an entrepreneur whose daily focus is on being better today than he was yesterday. Please check out how to find John in our description. Let's jump into this week's conversation, Conditioning.
Welcome to another edition of Truth Seekers with me, Coach Nick, and Coach Josh. And today we're joined by John. Our subject today is conditioning. Conditioning in practice, maybe. John, I'd like to dive straight in, if I may. As we were just kind of getting started today, we're talking about how our day is going, and what you said, it's going. It's going. And we say that so often. I've heard so many people say that, and I've certainly said it myself. And I had a recognition of it a while back. And just to think about the intentionality around what I meant was when I was saying that, I think what I'm saying is when I say that is that it's going and I'm kind of suggesting it's out of my control, right? And I think about the conditioning with that straight away. It's like, well, like how do we condition ourselves to be aware of some of those things? And maybe that's not how it reflects for you, but certainly that just jumped out for me for sure. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting perspective for sure. And yeah, I mean, what do we mean by that? I think when I say that, when my immediate response is it's going, really probably what that means is, it's of the million things that I've got running through my mind right now, and the, hundreds or thousands of tasks that, sit on that list of to-dos that are yet to be completed. I'm amazed that it is going, right? Like that we do keep moving forward, and progress, right? That's my biggest thing. It's, it's not a great day. It's not a terrible day. It's a day and it's going.
So for you, as long as there's progress from those millions of things in your mind and thousands of things on the to-do list, that's
100%.
interesting. So progress. So then, so tie that to conditioning, if you will. So like, how do you think about progress in terms of conditioning, in terms of tying the days together? Like today's just a day. It's like you're doing what you need to do. What jumps out for you there?
Yeah, well, to most simply define what that looks like to me, an example of progress and the conditioning that it will take to get there is, I know that I should be scheduling my days better, right? That it shouldn't feel so crazy. I shouldn't be looking at my clock going, oh my God, I've got 10 minutes to log in and I haven't even looked at the topic yet. Right. And I know these things, and that's why I say, progress is the most important. I happen to be a recovering addict. Alcohol was my drug of choice. Drank for the better part of my life. Honestly, started at around 12 years of age. Got real heavy into it into my 20s and straight up through my mid 30s. I've been sober now just over 6 years. So in fact, I have it here, right here on my wall in my home office here. It's, what did you do to challenge yourself today? Progress, not perfection, right? We're dealing with so much. I mean, just as humans in everyday normal life, without all of the external noise, just within our own self and with our families and things like that, we're dealing with so much, and it can be very, very overwhelming. So for me, I need to better condition myself to learn that, maybe tonight I will sit down and actually schedule out the next day or two, and maybe I won't, but it's there. I know that it needs to be done. And eventually it will get done. And there's the progress.
Beautiful. Thanks so much for sharing that, John. Thanks for your candor as well. And just it's just a great place to start from, right? So it's so easy. You could have said, well, things are okay. I'm going along, I'm moving along, but like just the fact that you have the awareness to see it, whether you choose to do something about it or not, that's a completely different scenario. So many things jump out there. What you got, Coach?
Yeah. So, and same thing for me. Like, thanks for sharing. That's that's your journey. That's your path.
Yeah.
That you're on. And kudos to you for 6 years sober. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what jumped out to me is that conditioning is happening, whether we're aware of it or not. And it comes down to sometimes how intentional we are about it. Once we arrive to that awareness that it's happening, like I'm being conditioned in certain ways that I'm not aware of. And that might show up in terms of the schedule getting away from me, but then I can be purposeful about the conditioning. Does that resonate with you, John?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Really, it's we are constantly being conditioned, right? Constantly. You're listening to the radio, you're watching TV, Facebook, it's nonstop, and why do we all suffer from, or seem to suffer from, anxiety and depression and things like that more now than ever? Sure, 2020 specifically, just because it's a crazy year, but I mean, in general, just we are constantly connected now, right? We're flooded with 24-hour everything, and it's immediate. And if it's not immediate, right, we've been conditioned in that way too. What happens to you when you travel outside of not just your Wi-Fi, but what if all of a sudden you don't have any cell service and you go to grab your phone because you're conditioned subconsciously to do so, right? You stop at that red light or whatever, which, by the way, I do not do this, but I see plenty of people do it. You stopped at that red light waiting for it to turn green, and the first thing you do without even thinking about it is grab your phone to log into Facebook or see if someone messaged you or whatever, right? What's the first thing that you think when that page doesn't load? We've been conditioned for that immediate interaction. And it's great in a lot of ways. It's terrible in many others. Go ahead, Coach.
There's been studies, right, of like what these likes or retweets do to our dopamine levels or whatever it is, and that's conditioning right there, right? Like we're seeking out this pleasure that is I would argue that's baseless. Like what is it? Just other people's affirmation or confirmations of our belief systems? Like what value is that providing for us other than just a furthering of our beliefs, which may or may not be serving us? It's like it's conditioning us to further our belief system. I think is a lot of what social media is.
Oh, for sure. In fact, I've even said, I think probably the first time I had this mini epiphany, if you will, just a few weeks ago, with everything going on with the, election cycle and this and that. And I'm on TikTok, right? So I have quite a follow. I have over 60,000 followers on TikTok.
Wow.
And it's just, from the jump, for whatever reason, I've been able to rock the algorithm. But it's also gotten to a point where I'm looking at these algorithms, in TikTok specifically, but they're all the same. And they've gotten too good. Because to your point, Coach Josh, you end up in a bubble. We end up in a bucket, right? Yeah. We end up only surrounded by people who think the same as us, who have, all these things, they maybe dress the same, whatever. the same values, which is not a bad thing. But when you've removed opposing viewpoints and criticism and, you know, whatever you think is, oh, there's my dog, whatever you perceive as being negative or anything like that, you know, if I don't like it, I can delete your comment, I can block you, right? Like, but at the end of the day, what good does that do for any of us, really?
So develop that further, Coach. What do you like? Where does that lead to? If we're just in that bubble, like, and we're conditioned to just keep believing what we believe, what happens? Where do we go from there?
It's like anything else, right? If you're facing down a path, it leads to a destination. It leads to a destiny. And so it's so I flip it back. It's what jumped out for me was, there's the external conditioning, and then there's the internal conditioning, or more of the intentional conditioning. And what we've talked about mostly so far is the external stuff that's coming in. And that kind of makes me happy in a way, because it's kind of like, well, that's okay. It can be whatever it is. I can still choose to focus on what I want to focus on, what I want to condition myself on internally. And in fact, I quite like the fact that when the outside gets more intense, it's more of an opportunity to practice the conditioning for what I do want. It's like it's almost easier, you know. It's almost easier because when the going gets tough, like tough get going. Right? So it's like, well, if it's like if you're really really super fat, there's going to be a lot of pain there to get do something about that. And so working out is probably something is you're going to get impetus to do so, and to focus on those things from your point of view to get into that point. Condition, working out, condition yourself where it becomes automatic. And then if suddenly like you feel good about yourself, you look good, you're healthy, that push to do those things isn't quite as much. So the impetus to condition yourself just it gets pulled back a little bit. And so like the environment right now, I'm like, great, like all of this conditioning that's pushed on us just gives us an opportunity to flick it around and make sure that we're focused on, just a reminder, focused on what you can control. This is definitely a rhetoric for the entire year, but even now around election time, even more, should I say, let's just focus on knowing what we are conditioning ourselves on, because it's not just what's coming in, it's what we're doing. It's like, what are the habits that you do every day that you just do by yourself without some sort of outside influence? Do you get up at a certain time of the day? Do you go to bed at a certain time of the day? I got in the habit in the afternoon, like 2 or 3 o'clock, whenever I have a break from the calls, I'll go downstairs and I'll get like a bunch of like, it's a healthy snack, right? But I've got like a bunch of nuts. I've got some like 100% cacao, and I've got these like magic spoon cereals with no grains in them, which are really cool. And then I'll eat that. And I've just got into a habit of doing that. Like that's a conditioning. I've conditioned myself to do that.
Right.
I'm like, whoa. Like, and so you can argue, right? Is that a negative thing, conditioning, or is that a positive conditioning, or is it a neutral conditioning? I think that's the assessment we have to do. Is like, am I making a choice about this conditioning, and do I want to continue doing it? So back to that point, like, where is it going to lead me? If I continue doing that, is it going to lead me to a person I want to be, or not? And I think just that, back to the awareness, Coach, right? John, one of the things we always work on, first things first, is awareness, right? Because without awareness, you can't do anything. It's not everything, but we need that.
No, but I firmly believe it's the start.
Yes.
Right. With a complete lack of self-awareness. I mean, wouldn't that be the definition of ignorance?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's for example, one of the things that I started, a new conditioning practice that I started at the offset of the pandemic was learning to be more mindful, practicing 10 minutes every morning of guided meditation. I get up and pop the earbuds in and I hop on YouTube, and my God, there is a never ending stream of, and I find, 5 minutes, 10 minutes long doesn't take much, but I'll tell you what, they call it practice for a reason, because those first couple of times, my God, was I frustrated. I'm thinking to myself, there's no way I could just to the thoughts. And it's just, this constant jumble. And within a week of sitting there, the first 2 days were the hardest. Within a week of sitting down and doing it every single day, first thing in the morning, before I grabbed my coffee, before I sat down to read a chapter in my book, which is another thing that I started doing during the pandemic, was reading more. And my God, next thing you know, I'm finding complete peace and serenity within 2-3 minutes of logging in and for my session. So but again, I wouldn't have ever thought to even begin meditating if I wasn't aware that it was something that could benefit me, right?
It's like, thank you, pandemic.
Well, and that's the strange thing. I've had that conversation with friends of mine that, the pandemic in a way said, listen, I'm a small business owner. And I'll be completely honest with you, this pandemic, we might be bankrupt by the beginning of 2021. No lie. I mean, that's no lie.
Yeah.
We've gone from being one of the quickest growing small businesses in our space in our region. Last year we started distributing nationally. February we were on Cesar Millan's ranch in California, shooting a potential new TV show with him. I mean, it looked like the world was ours, right? All those years of hard work that we had put in was finally going to pay off. And in comes 2020, right? It's, so that's terrible, right? But on the flip side, I'm a single dad who's gotten more time with my son than I've had his entire 12 years, right? He's here with me every day now, Monday through Friday, distance learning, which we're not a big fan of, but it is what it is. Like you said, Coach Nick, control what you can control. If we start worrying about the things that we have no control over, right? I want this guy to win. I want this guy to win. I mean, there's one thing you can do, and that's show up and vote, right? And that after that, you don't have much control. But I've been able to spend time with him in his formative years. I've learned to meditate. I've started reading again. It's so with everything bad, we can find a silver lining. You have to be aware and you have to look for it.
Yeah. You have to want to, right? Like what's bad's available, but so is what's good. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And yeah, sorry to hear that. But as you said, it's like, well, whatever you focus on is what you get. And you're moving towards creating these new opportunities.
Right.
And like there's so much of that stuff jumps out for me because it's like there's like you can choose to go onto YouTube and find meditation. Like there's so much that you can do. You can also choose to go onto YouTube and find something that's negative because there's going to be so much of that as well. So it's all available. It's just where do you want to go? And are you being intentional about it, right? And it's like, okay, well, take the most of it. And maybe like this year's an extraordinary year, whatever way you cut it, whatever way you think about it. There's extraordinary things that came out of this year, and most people wouldn't predict what happened, and it's still extraordinary. Like there's going to be lots of so much stuff that's going to be available, already is, and will be in the future that because of this year, and you just get to decide who you want to be. Same thing. So it's like, okay, well, where do I want to put myself right now that I can condition myself over and over? What are the things I can do over and over that's going to put me in the best position to be most successful in the coming years because of this year? So what's the decision to make now? And I think it's time to have even more urgency about the things that we're doing. And so how can you flex in your business? Like what's available in your business now that just wasn't available a year ago? Like what can happen like in your business that wasn't part of your business plan for 5 years, but now is because of what happened. It's like, well, if you believe that everything happens for a reason and things that don't happen that you expect make way for something bigger, then it's going to be exciting year next year for you, John.
Yeah, I think again, it's, keep a positive outlook. And firmly believe that everything does happen for a reason. It's all about, especially as entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs are a special breed, and that's why a lot of people who try to become entrepreneurs don't make it. Don't make it past their first couple of years because it takes grit. You know, you have to be determined. You have to accept the fact that there will be failures, right? One thing that I've taught my son since he was 5 years old, I said, listen, I said, you are going to make mistakes constantly, probably daily, right? But here's the thing. There's 3 things that I want you to remember to do when you make a mistake. Own it, right? Own the mistake. You did it. It happened. Can't take it back, but you can own it. If you need to, apologize sincerely. And number 3, and most importantly, do your damnedest to never make that same mistake again. Make that same mistake 2, 3, 4 times. Now it's a habit. Now you've got to condition yourself to unlearn a bad habit. And we all know that's 100 times harder than not having it become a habit in the first place. You know, I've got a lifetime of monumental mistakes, and all I've tried to do is instill in my son, you know, my legacy, that no one's perfect. You're going to make mistakes, but learn. Let's try not to make the monumental ones that I've made. I already made those for you. We're covered, right? Like you go and you make some of your own, and hopefully not, you know, not as severe, right?
Well, and John, just think of the conditioning with that, with like the coaching of your son with that lesson in there.
Yep.
I mean, perhaps there was a time in your life where you didn't know that lesson or didn't understand it, but it was so important to your development and where you are today.
That's right.
That it was important enough to start to condition your son to understand the importance of why that matters and what it's done for you, so that he can basically accelerate his understanding of that. And that's what conditioning is, right? If you think of what conditioning is, we're trying to accelerate or get something faster than just kind of allowing it to happen. It's being intentional about achieving that end result.
Yeah, no doubt, you know, and you know, and letting them know that, you know, he's not alone, right? You know, we all struggle, we all go through trials and tribulations every day. Mine are different than I'm sure, you know, yours were today. Who knows, you might go through some of the same stuff tomorrow that I went through. You know, but we're all going. Yeah. We're all struggling.
Yeah.
Right. That's right.
Yeah. And you can start to condition yourself on how to handle, like, you know, failure or
opportunity.
Yeah, you turn it around. Like tough times, like Coach Nick was saying, like, you know, it sucks for the business, but like turn it around. Where's the silver lining in this? And then you're just off and running. If you can condition your mind to do that all the time, whenever you experience a negative emotion, frustration, sadness, anxiety, like lean into it, get curious about what it is, and then like turn it around, flip it on its head and make it a positive. It's conditioning.
Very important.
Yeah, so some fantastic stuff covered today for sure. Some real gold nuggets. Thanks, John. Thanks, Coach. Really cool. Like, you know, what really jumps out for me, gosh, along those things is just knowing that there's always something there. Like the conditioning, like you said, Coach, was conditioning is always happening whether you know it or not. And so you just want to be really intentional about what it is. You know, I think that's the biggest thing for me, just to remind ourselves of. And, you know, for you, John, what would you say? What's your biggest takeaway from today?
Jeez.
Can only choose one.
No, you know, it just reaffirms to me that I'm not alone in my thinking. You know, especially when we feel so alone now, you know, yeah, we can go out and about and do things, but it's just so different. So it's nice to know that, again, that I am making progress. And I think it sounds like we all are continuing to make progress. And, let's just keep pushing forward and get through all this together.
Amen. Amen to that.
Yeah, no, and it's like, just no matter what happens, you always get to choose what to focus on. Like, you always they can only control what you can control. Doesn't matter how big, how monumental, how painful, it's still true. And it's just getting back to that as quick as you can, because it doesn't matter, because it's gone. Take what you can, what's the lesson, apply it, move forward, focus on what you control. And that conditioning, if that's the number one thing you condition, that's got to be the biggest indicator for success, if you can continue to do that.
Yeah.
Takeaways for you, Coach?
Yeah, it all starts with awareness. I mean, I think we're all in agreement with that one. And roll that into, you have to want to find the silver lining. Like, I think that's part of the awareness, or the evolution of that awareness is, okay, like, I'm in this situation, I'm aware of, maybe I can control my conditioning. Now, what do I want to condition myself to or towards?
Right.
So we're in control.
You got it. Yeah, absolutely. Well, fantastic stuff. Thank you so much, John, for coming in today.
Oh,
Absolute pleasure. Thank you, Coach, as always.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, everyone. Thank you.